game. Blouses.
Gallon chuck.
Disaster.
Spaghetti.
Disaster.
Well, I'm no doctor.
We now join America's most popular show, already in progress. Everybody loves
Mitch and Sean. You guys are the greatest duo.
Fantastic.
That team sure did suck last night. They just plain sucked. I've seen teams suck before, but they were the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked.
Welcome into another edition of the Post Game Pints podcast. I'm Sean Campbell with Mitch Gallo, and we've got a treat for you today because we're going to have a lot of fun. We're having a mini draft. We are going to try and figure out who are the best clutch playoff performers of all time in the National Hockey League. We are brought to you by our good friends LaBrosse and Cunningham's Pub. And you know what? I know that everybody was excited about the LaBrosse, Campbell, and Gallo. We have another thing you should be very excited about coming very soon in collaboration with LaBrosse. And I know, Mitch, you are excited about it. I know you're excited for this episode as well.
Of course. And look, I don't have a beer in front of me right now because I am currently out, so I have to make my way over to LaBrosse. Dave Trentadue also promised me some of his beers. I have not tried those yet.
Oh, they're good.
You're right. Summertime beer from the Post Game Pints podcast coming up shortly, so you don't want to miss that. But you mentioned it. I am really pumped for our categories, or I don't know how you want to phrase it, our list that we've done in the past on episode 108.
Yeah, so this one's going to be fun. And in the past, we've done lists where you had your favorite top five and my favorite top five, and sometimes there's crossover. We're not going to allow that in this picking. We're going to draft. So there will be 10 players drafted. And you can agree or disagree. That's what the comment section is for. And you could send your own. I am sure, Mitch, that there is going to be a player that we're both going to miss, and people are going to be upset about it. This is what happens because the term clutch player can be understood differently by me and differently by you. Like what you're going to rely on to determine clutch might be different what I rely on to determine clutch. Sure. And the same for you, the listener and the viewer here on the Post Game Pints podcast. That's why I like it. I like it because you're going to see my list and go, what? That guy's not clutch? Or, or you guys forgot the most clutch. So I can't wait to see it. I'm curious. I have a list of 9 players. And I'm curious if I'm going to have to break that 9 because you took some of my players. Does that make sense?
I put 10 players down just in case.
Yeah. We'll see how this goes. So how would you determine this? How do you want to start this off here, Mitch?
Well, I'll defer to you, the winner of the Ben Sherratt draft. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that Sean Starr had joined us. We each took teams that we thought Ben Sherratt would be traded to by the Montreal Canadiens. And with the second pick, you went with the Florida Panthers. He is a member of the Florida Panthers, currently playing in the playoffs. So because you won, I will defer to you.
All right. So I'll take my spoils as ever I can, and I will go with the first overall pick in the clutch playoff performers in the National Hockey League, past, present, however you want to look at it. I'm going to go number 1 here. I think it's an easy number 1. There's a couple things that I need to, I'm not going to tell you what. There's one category that they all had to have in my mind. Okay,
Same.
Mitch?
Same.
But I don't want to say that category in case you're going to be like, oh, so then you're going to save a player for later because I want you to take your players if you need them.
Well,
so,
I have one category as well that they all had to, like a box they all had to check off.
Yes.
On my list of 10, though, I had just one that I thought I might take at some point. He doesn't check off this box, but the rest do.
Yeah, so this one I'm going to go with, the number 1 is Gio Sakic. There is one player that leads the National Hockey League in playoff overtime goals. That is a big category. Not the only category that I looked at, But if you're talking about clutch performance, when you're in the playoffs and you need a win and you're in overtime, you want the guy that scored the most. And I am going to go with Gio Sakic. He also won the Stanley Cup a couple of times, and this guy is a true leader. He always stepped up when things mattered most. He had 188 points in 174 games, so he's over a point a game player in the playoffs, which is something very special. So I am going with my first overall pick, Gio Sakic.
All right, I had Joe Sakic on my list, and the overtime playoff goals was a big reason why. You never mentioned the number, by the way. The number is 8.
Sorry.
8 career overtime goals in the playoffs for Joe Sakic.
Yeah.
Pretty good on the international stage as well. That's why you're doing the Bob Cole, because of the big goal that he scored at the Salt Lake Olympics. But, Sean, I think you very much galaxy-brained this pick, because there is a much better pick in this spot, number 1. Joe Sakic was on my list. I'd have him in my top 5. So it's not like you went off the board completely. But I cannot believe you went with this first overall. I am going to call you now the Mark Crawford of the Post Game Pints podcast, because you passed on the greatest player of all time, Wayne Gretzky. So with my first pick, I'm going with Gretzky, Sean. He's got a Conn Smythe. You talk about playoffs, most points of all time in the playoffs, 4 Stanley Cup championships. Took an LA Kings team that had no business being in the Stanley Cup final all the way there, when he had an overtime winner in Game 6 of the conference final and a hat trick in Game 7 of the Western Conference final. Wayne Gretzky's the GOAT. You have to go with Wayne Gretzky with the number 1 pick. So for me, this is easy. I'm glad I deferred to you for the first pick, because you didn't take the guy that should be number 1, the greatest of all time, the great one.
Yeah, Wayne's on my list. He was number 2 on my list. He was right there. He's on my list. I could show you the numbers. I broke it all down. His 4 Stanley Cups. I know what he's done in the playoffs. I get it. But I leaned on clutch, not always just accumulating points in 8-2 victories like he did in the middle of the 80s. Okay, so yes, Wayne Gretzky, he is clutch. He should be on the list. If I didn't say Joe Sakic, I was going to go with Wayne Gretzky. But I wanted the guy that scored 8 overtime winners on my list. I wasn't letting him go past that first one. I was hoping I could maybe get Wayne Gretzky and slide him into that second spot, but clearly you were ready for that. That's fine with me. I'm not countering your pick. I think you're great. It's good. If you went for first overall, you would have taken Wayne. I would have taken Joe. So we're exactly where we would have been anyways.
Nice graphics, by the way.
Yeah, that looks good. That's Dave Trenadewey. Go pick up some Trenadewey beer right there. How wrong was I taking Joe Sakic over Wayne Gretzky? Clutch playoff performers. All right, Mitch.
Yes.
I get another pick here.
Number 2.
And maybe you think I'm going a little off the board here, but I don't know if I can. I think this is you taking clutch, and I want him on my team. I know a lot of people didn't want him on his team. A lot of people don't like him. They hate playing against him. But this guy knows how to win. And he knows how to elevate his game when it comes to the playoffs. Oh, you want to talk about Conn Smythe? You want to talk about overtime winners? You want to be a Stanley Cup champion? You want Claude Lemieux on your playoff team. And I'm sorry, he may not go into the greatest hockey player of all time, but when you're having a conversation about the greatest clutch playoff performers ever in the National Hockey League, you got to bring up Claude Lemieux. You can hate him all you want, but he needs to be on your team. This guy also has 3 overtime winners, including overtime winner against the Hartford Whalers, which wouldn't have pushed the Canadiens to the Stanley Cup in 86. 4-time Stanley Cup champion with 3 different teams. And what I love is his points per game is higher in the playoffs than it was in the regular season. He knew how to take it to the next level. I'm taking Claude Lemieux with my second overall pick. I might have wanted to wait, but again, he's a player I wanted on my team. I wanted him on my team.
Great pick here with Claude Lemieux, a bit of an obvious one just because of the separation with his play in the regular season and in the playoffs. The one stat you didn't mention, Sean, with Claude Lemieux, Conn Smythe Award winner as well in 1994.
I did mention it. I threw it in there.
What's that?
I said, you want Conn Smythe, you got it here too.
Okay, so the one Conn Smythe, you're right about the 3 teams. That's very impressive with Colorado, New Jersey, and the Montreal Canadiens. I can't say much about your Claude Lemieux pick. Sean, with my second pick in our top clutch playoff performers, I'm going to go with a guy who didn't have one Conn Smythe, didn't have two Conn Smythes. He had 3 Conn Smythe trophies. He won the Stanley Cup 4 times, and he did it at a position where you need to be on your game. I'm taking Patrick Waugh with my second pick. I know a little bit off the board going with a goaltender here so early. Save percentage in the playoffs, Sean, of .918. And you just think back to that 1995-1996 season where you have the blow-up with Montreal against Detroit. Patrick Waugh asked to be traded. He gets dealt to the Colorado Avalanche, and the Colorado Avalanche, who had tried for so long to take it to the next level when they were Quebec, drafting Owen Nolan, drafting Matt Sundin, drafting Joe Sakic, drafting Eric Lindros, and making the trade for Forsberg, but they couldn't get to the next level. When Patrick Waugh got there, they had their final piece, and that's why they won 2 Stanley Cups, because they had one of the greatest goaltenders of all time and the most clutch goaltender of all time, in my opinion, with the 4 cups.
Yeah, he had a couple of those trophies, that's for sure. And, if he was listening, he may not be able to hear us because of all those Stanley Cup rings in his ears right now with Patrick Waugh. Of course, Patrick Waugh had to be on that list. He was going to be on my list as well. But it's funny how you look here for clutch performers, and we keep seeing Colorado Avalanche jerseys out there. And I know that Claude Lemieux did it with the Canadians, Joe Sakic, and of course, the same thing with Patrick Waugh, and you have Wayne Gretzky there. But you got to have those Stanley Cups. You got to have the Conn Smythe. You got to be able to perform when it's the highest. And if I'm taking a goalie, I'm taking Patrick Waugh. And you got Patrick Waugh as a goalie. So no disagreement there on when it comes to the clutch. When it comes to the clutch performers as a goaltender, Patrick Waugh would, on my list for playoff performing goaltending, number 1. Easy choice. I'm going to go with a Montreal Canadian. But I'm going to go back in time a little bit. And I'm not talking about someone that won 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 Stanley Cups. I'm talking about someone who won 8 Stanley Cups. And that's got to be the Rocket. And look, I may not have been alive, may not be able to watch it, but I know what he did in the playoffs. I know how clutch was. I know it was a different league. It was a different time. But I can't have a list when it talks about clutch playoff performers. And you have someone that has scored half of their career overtime goals in the Stanley Cup final. He has 3 of his overtime winners are in the final when you need it the most. So to me, that is the most important, one of the most important stats in looking at what the Rocket was able to do. The other thing with it, so half his goals, he has 6 overtime winners in the playoffs, but 3 of them are in the playoffs. He also has, because you don't always have to win in overtime, in the playoffs, he has 18 game-winning goals off the stick. You needed a game to be won. It needed to go to the Rocket. One of the greatest goal scorers of all time. The trophy's named after him. 8 Stanley Cups. You want a clutch performer. You need to turn to somebody to score a goal in a time of need. I'm taking the Rocket. The Rocket's on my list. Easy choice for me.
No problem with you taking the Rocket. I have to say I didn't choose any players that I didn't watch.
A lot of these players I have, and I'll tell you, are players I watched and players, some active players. But to me, looking at the numbers, crunching it down, knowing the history of Montreal, knowing what he did, I'm sorry, I had to take him. But he is the one that was not on my seen before list.
All right, with my third pick, Sean, I'm going to go back to the Oilers dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing about this player is I mentioned the 4 Stanley Cups that Wayne Gretzky won with the Oilers. Well, when Wayne Gretzky left the Oilers to go to the LA Kings, this player won a Stanley Cup without Wayne. And then he won a Stanley Cup in a city that hadn't had a Stanley Cup championship in 50 years. We are talking about a guy who was able to call his shot in Game 6 against the New Jersey Devils in the Eastern Conference Final. Somebody who we always know, when the games mattered most, showed his leadership just as much as his ability to score a big goal. He has a Conn Smythe trophy. He won the other 4 cups I was talking about with Wayne Gretzky. I'm going with Mark Messier. I feel as though anytime we talk about the greatest players of all time, we don't mention Messier. We always go Gretzky or Lemieux, Howe, and you go down the top scorers of all time, and everyone always skips over Mess. So I'm going to show him some love here, Sean. And again, call this shot in that famous Game 6 against New Jersey. We're gonna win that game. And then of course you have the big Matteau goal, and they win that series. So I'm going with Mark Messier.
Yeah, look, I'm going to be honest. I didn't have Messi on my list of 9 players. He probably would have been in 10, 11, 12. I looked at him. I thought about it. I crunched some numbers. I thought, could he be on my list? And I know that he did it on his own, but he also did the majority of the time was when he was with Wayne. And I leaned that on Wayne. I like that he went and did it on his own. And you need help anyways.
Twice.
Yeah, that's fine. And he raised that Stanley Cup. He gets a lot of credit for that New Jersey, Game 7 come from behind. But he didn't score the goal. For a guy that, is a good playoff performer, good leader, he didn't score it. So I'm just, the guy's got 0 playoff overtime goals. It was a category I leaned on, not 100%, but it made him fall down the ladder. That's why. That's all I'm saying.
All right, what do you have at 4?
All right, number 4. As I look at all my list, it's going to be my first active player. My first active player. And when you look at all the all-time leading point producers in the playoffs, he just hit 200 points and growing. Sidney Crosby, Conn Smythe, 3 Stanley Cups. You want somebody, to step up when he needs, when you need something. He has, yes, you could talk about the 1 overtime goal. He also has 25 game-winning assists in the playoffs. It's one of the things that he does so well. He's one of the best playmakers in the game, one of the best goal scorers of his game. You want to talk about leaders and dragging teams into it like Messier does. I'm going to take Crosby. I'll take Crosby over Messier. I would have, if I had choice, I would have taken Crosby over Messier easily. And it's the Stanley Cups, doing it on your own. You could say, oh, he's got Malkin, and Malkin could be on this list too. But I'm leaning on Sidney Crosby, the 200 points in the playoffs and growing. He's going to just climb and climb and climb. Like, you look at that list and all the players, it's all those 80s dynasty Edmonton Oilers on the all-time scoring list. And Sidney Crosby's amongst them. Sidney Crosby started playing in 2005. That means he took a franchise and turned them into a playoff powerhouse. He had to be on clutch playoff performers, I think, on our list on either one of our teams. So I'm going to make sure I put Sidney Crosby on my list.
Full disclosure here, I wish I would have saved Messier and taken Crosby 3rd, because I would have still ended up with Messier since you weren't taking him.
Nope.
And Crosby was the next guy I had in queue. So I agree with everything you said about Crosby. And the one thing I'll add, Sean, you mentioned the Conn Smythe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not many players have won the Conn Smythe in back-to-back seasons, which is something that Sidney Crosby was able to do when he was part of the Penguins team, the last team, before the Tampa Bay Lightning recently did it to win the Stanley Cup in 2 straight years. Taken a long time for somebody to do that before the Penguins did it just a few years ago. So I had Crosby up next. So you took him exactly where you had to get him on your team. And I feel a little bit remorseful or regretful that I went with Messier a little bit too early, maybe. So with my 4th pick, Sean, I will go with one of the other great Penguins of all time. I'm going to go with Mario Lemieux here. I'm not going to overthink things. If you want to know the player to win 2 Conn Smythes in a row before Crosby, well, the answer to that question is Mario. Mario Lemieux winning 2 Conn Smythe trophies in a row. And just go look, like, you want to talk about being able to elevate at the right times. Go look at the goal that he scored against the Boston Bruins when it's Raymond Bourque trying to defend him. Go look at the goal, the famous one in the final against the Minnesota North Stars, where he just goes around everybody. Mario Lemieux, to me, is the home run pick here. Obviously, he had the 2 Stanley Cup championships with the Penguins. It's a little bit unfortunate that his career didn't have a little bit more longevity. I shouldn't say longevity, but that he didn't have the back issues and have to battle through cancer during his career. And even go look at the 87 Canada Cup. in that big moment there. I know we're talking about playoff performers right now,
Yeah.
but that's like a playoff moment. So I got Lemieux here.
Yeah, you know what? It's not that bad when you wanted Crosby and you're stuck with Lemieux, right? That's not that bad, eh? I
Yeah.
wanted Crosby, but I'm stuck with taking Mario Lemieux. And I know you've mentioned international play, Joe Sakic and Mario with the Canada Cup. I didn't look at international play. I didn't.
Oh no, I know. Neither was I. I'm just saying
Yeah.
it also measures into the clutch factor, right?
Yeah. So I like your pick. I have no problem with it. I just wanted more playoff games from him. There was that time, it's kind of a little different. You saw Sidney Crosby came in and it was almost right away he was able to make that change. And it took a little bit longer for Mario, in the mid 80s to get the Penguins rolling a little bit. I know that the management and all that had to change, but I'm not saying that he didn't do a good job, but maybe that's why I didn't have him as high when I'm talking about clutch playoff performance, but no one's going to disagree with what he did in the playoffs for the Penguins in that early 90s run. All right, my final pick. Looking at my list here, I'm going to take another active player. And I'm just curious if you can figure it out. Three-time Stanley Cup. You want a Conn Smythe. He's got 5 overtime goals. He's got 11 game-winning goals in the playoffs. He's got 136 points in 132 playoff games. And I know his team is not very good right now, and he makes a lot of money. But
Sean.
I got to go with Patrick Kane. I'm sorry. Patrick Kane is clutch. When it comes to playoff performances, you could take some players, the Taves, and I was thinking Duncan Keith and how he was able to do that. But I'm sorry. Patrick Kane's a clutch playoff performer when he's in the playoffs. He is a special player. He is a special element on the ice every single time he touches the puck. He's a game changer when you get into the extra frame. He elevates his game when it matters the most. Patrick Kane, to me, is on my clutch NHL playoff performers.
Yep. I mean, I had him jotted down. I knew exactly where you were going. How many players have scored a Stanley Cup game-winning goal in overtime? We saw both Kane and Alec Martinez do that, but it's a rare feat. Obviously, I'm not comparing Martinez to some of the guys we're talking about, clearly, but I heavily considered Patrick Kane the 3-time Stanley Cup champion. Now, I wrote down 10 names, all right, and they're all gone except for 2. So we've done very well.
I have a couple left.
So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I have 2 names left, but I'm looking at my board here, and I see Mario, Gretzky, Messier, and Patrick Waugh. So I have 3 forwards and a goaltender. So because of that, I have to put a defenseman in here. You don't have a defenseman. I don't have a defenseman, and I don't think that's right because in the playoffs, defensemen play such a huge role. So I'll think back, Sean, to when the Edmonton Oilers were in the Stanley Cup final because of one player, and then that player left the Edmonton Oilers, and they cratered and didn't make the playoffs for 15 years. And that player went to a new city, and when he got there, they not only went to the Cup final, but they won the Stanley Cup the very next year. To me, come playoff time, on defense, you want somebody who's filthy, nasty, is going to do whatever it takes to win a hockey game. So for that, with the 5th pick, I'm going to go with Chris Pronger. Chris Pronger, to me, is just the guy you don't want to play against in the playoffs. I'm almost countering your Claude Lemieux now with Chris Pronger because Chris Pronger is the defenseman that Claude Lemieux was as a forward. So that's my pick, Pronger.
You just have to think of Edmonton getting to the Stanley Cup final. That's really all you have to think about. That was Pronger. Pronger did that, and Chris Pronger at your number 5. That's fine. I had a defenseman on my list. It wasn't Pronger, but I did think about Pronger. I went in a different direction when it went to a defenseman, but I'm happy with my list. I wrote down. I told you 9 names, and I got 5 out of my top 6 on my list, so I'm very happy. 5 out of the top 6 on my list. The one that was not in my top 6 that you got was at number 1. So I'm very, very happy with that. But you getting Chris Pronger at 5, I think it's impressive. So my final clutch NHL playoff performers: Joe Sakic, Claude Lemieux, Maurice Richard, Sidney Crosby, and Patrick Kane. And Mitch, your 5 are?
I have Wayne Gretzky, Patrick Waugh, Mark Messier, Mario Lemieux, and Chris Pronger.
All right. Do you want to give honorable mentions before we wrap up? And by the way, you can agree or disagree with our list. It was a draft. We couldn't take the same players. Comment down below. You can tweet us directly at Sean R. Campbell or Mitch Y. Gallo on the Twitter machine and get those comments running of who you agree or disagree as the NHL all-time clutch playoff performers. These are, I guess, between us, our top 10. Do you want to throw out your honorable mentions that maybe you wanted to throw out there, but you couldn't?
Well, I only had one more on my list. And that was, and it would have been a way off the board pick.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about guys who elevated at the playoffs, Justin Williams was Mr. Game 7, right? And wherever this guy went, he seemed to have success. So I had Justin Williams as an honorable mention.
Yeah, Justin Williams, one of my honorable mentions. I looked into some Game 7 stats, and you have to bring him up because when you could go into playoffs, Game 7s, Stanley Cups, and bring it to the top. I'm going to give you two other names. Nick Lidstrom.
Yep, thought about him.
4-time Stanley Cup champion. Has the overtime goal. But how about this, okay? He has 54 and he had 54 goals and 129 assists in his career. 11 goals and 25 of those were all game winners. So that's like clutch. That's the moment that matters the most. It's like 1 out of 5. Every time he got a point was off a game winner for Nick Lidstrom. And you got to think about the minutes elevation, very much like Pronger. Yes, they're 22 and 23 in the regular season, but they go to 27, 28, 29, 30 minutes a night in the playoffs. And the other one's Nikita Kucherov. Not everybody's favorite, but Nikita Kucherov knows how to elevate in the playoffs. His points per game is higher. He's already a point-a-game player in the regular season at 1.09. He's 1.13 when it's elevated into the playoffs. You get your 2-time Stanley Cup champion. You can get into your points, your game log. Just Kucherov was there. He just didn't make the cut into the top 5 that we were having, but he's another honorable mention I want to put out there.
Well, since you gave two honorable mentions, I'll give you one more then. And I'll say, how about Marian Hossa? He goes to Pittsburgh. They go to the final.
Mm-hmm.
Detroit the next year. They go to the final. And then he goes to Chicago in free agency, and they win the Stanley Cup 3 times. Marian Hossa, wherever he went, the team won.
Yeah. So what was your category that they had to have?
Well, I ended up choosing one that they didn't have it in the end. I was looking, Sean, very strongly at Conn Smythe winners.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that, it wasn't just one moment, but it was throughout the entire playoffs that they stepped up. The only one on my list of my 5 that I chose that didn't have the Conn Smythe award at any point was Pronger, actually.
Yeah, he probably could have won it a couple times too.
Well, he probably would have won it the year Edmonton lost in 7 to Carolina. Had Edmonton won that Stanley Cup, but instead, of course, that Conn Smythe went to
Cam Ward.
For
me, it was clear it was Stanley Cup. You had to have a Stanley Cup. You had to be able to drag that team.
Right.
And Conn Smythe was heavy as well. I like playoff overtime, but I looked a lot of game winning, game tying situations. I looked at their numbers in the Stanley Cup final versus the numbers in the opening round. Not that opening round isn't important. It's playoff clutch performer, but I went into the Stanley Cup numbers as well and what they were able to do. And that's some of my breakdown of what I looked into clutch playoff performers. So what makes a clutch player in the playoffs? You let us know. Comment down below at just down there, right? Below. Is that how it works?
Yeah, unless you're listening on iTunes, SoundCloud, or any of the audio.
Give us your 5. Sites. Did I do better than Gallo? Who won?
That's what list? I want to know. I don't care what other players they had, Sean. I want to know whose
team.
Put
it back up,
like
Dave.
More.
Dave, put it back up. Let's show everybody again. What's this list?
Whose team do you like more?
Oh, let's see. You have Wayne and Mario together with Patrick Watt in nets. I'm just saying. I don't have a goalie, but I got the Rocket, and I mean, Claude Lemieux is going to injure somebody over there.
Yeah, Pronger might too.
Yeah, that's true. So this is what's going to happen. Claude Lemieux is going to injure Patrick Waugh, and then Chris Pronger is going to take out Claude Lemieux, but Chris Pronger is going to be suspended for the next game, and then I'll be 4-on-3 in the next game. I'll have Sakic, Richard, Crosby, and Kane versus Gretzky, Messier, and Lemieux.
I think we need to run a simulation of this.
I think that's what would happen, though. Claude would take out Patrick. Pronger would beat up Claude. Claude would be out, and Pronger would be out. I think that's how it works. It's like I'd be on a power play the whole time.
Sounds likely.
Perfect. Let us know what you think. And of course, special thanks to LaBrosse, Cunningham's Pub, and everybody that put this thing together. Trent Dewey Entertainment. Check out that Trent Dewey beer too over at LaBrosse. And stay tuned for what we have coming up at LaBrosse. Brand new summer beer coming, collaboration alongside with Post Game Pints. I think it's called Post Game Pint. I love that. That works.
Peace.
Well, how's that for your entertainment value?
They've done their job very, very well.
No.
Come on.
VBF.